When truth is buried underground, it grows, it chokes, it gathers such an explosive force that on the day it bursts out, it blows up everything with it. Seems kind of fitting that we begin with a famous quote from a popular fictional crime series, because the case that we are about to unfold today seems to appear straight out of a thriller film. Promising law school graduate and a Georgia attorney, Stephen McDaniel had a bright future ahead of him. But after repeated failed bar attempts, he struggled to find work. But no one in their wildest dreams would have imagined that this man would be later convicted for the murder of his neighbor and fellow law school graduate, Lauren Giddings. What was the turning point in this man's life that led him to take such an extreme step? Was it untreated mental illness or the potential consequences of failed expectations and career disappointments that made him murder his colleague? Stephen McDaniel, born on September 9, 1985, grew up near Atlanta, Georgia. Although having led an unremarkable childhood, Stephen pursued law and enrolled in Mercer University's law school, showing his academic aptitude. The future seemed promising for this young 25-year-old, as everything in his life was working out in his favor. He then finds accommodation in an apartment complex at a short distance from the school's campus. It is here that he meets 27-year-old Lauren Giddings, who was preparing to take her bar exam and then start a promising career as an attorney herself. However, McDaniel had other plans for her. No one would have ever guessed that while Giddings had been preparing for the bar, McDaniel had been preparing for her murder. But why? Suspecting that someone had been watching her, Giddings sent an email to her boyfriend telling him that she believed that someone had tried to break into her apartment. But unfortunately, the warning was a little too late. In the early hours of June 26, 2011, Stephen McDaniel breaks into the apartment of his neighbor and fellow Mercer University Law School graduate, Lauren Giddings. Soon after, he proceeds to murder her and dismembers her body brutally. While this was happening, Lauren's family and friends began to worry as she was not answering calls or responding to their texts. Everyone initially guessed that she was studying like she informed her family she would be. But days went by with no word from Lauren. On June 29th, Lauren's sister Caitlin realizes that something has gone wrong since none of her college friends had neither seen nor heard from her for the past few days. I did realize there were a couple of texts that hadn't been returned, so of course I called and it went straight to voicemail, Caitlin said. One of her friends, Ashley Morehouse, goes to her apartment to check on her and finds that Lauren's car is still parked. She enters her apartment with a spare key and finds Lauren's purse and her books and observes that everything is intact except Lauren, who is nowhere to be seen. Ashley informs Lauren's family, and they quickly drive down to her apartment and officially file a missing persons report 4 days after Lauren had gone missing. When the police get to the scene, they find no signs of forced entry. However, after searching the apartment for clues, they find enough indication that something was wrong. They decided to spray luminol, which is used to detect blood all over the house. In a sight that could send a chill down anyone's spine, the walls of the bathroom and floor light up. The detectives realized immediately that they were dealing with a crime, more specifically, a murder. One of the detectives on the case mentioned that while they were investigating, the wind began to turn and brought with it a terrible odor. So they decided to follow it and found something absolutely unimaginable: a torso thrown in a dumpster just in front of the apartment complex. Investigators soon began testing if the DNA of the torso matched Lauren's with the DNA sample from her hairbrush and samples from her parents. And the heartbreaking news that the DNA samples did match almost shattered Lauren's parents. Soon, a search party would be formed, including many of the locals who offered to help. Stephen McDaniel was one of those who offered to help. The news spread out about the disappearance of Lauren Giddings, and the commotion caught the attention of some local media outlets who arrived promptly to cover the event from the ground. Little did they know that in doing so, they were going to hand the police their first prime suspect, Stephen McDaniel. A local television news station called WGXA sent a crew to the building to report on the story. When they spotted McDaniel standing around, they asked if he would give an interview, and he agreed. Throughout this interview, Stephen McDaniel tries to act like a worried neighbor. However, he seemed more interested in establishing that He knew nothing about the whereabouts of Lauren, rather than show any real concern for her. But as the reporter told him that a body had been discovered in a nearby trash can, his demeanor completely changed. He became silent for a moment before telling the reporter that he needed to sit down and even started stuttering. It was later revealed that only Giddings' torso had been found, and the other parts of her body had been discarded elsewhere. On June 30th, the police also started conducting their own investigations and began interviewing anyone who lived at that apartment complex or even anyone who knew Lauren. They took McDaniel and Lauren's other neighbors to the police station to give statements about the young woman's disappearance. At the time, none of them knew that her remains had been found. All of the neighbors agreed to have their apartments searched, except for Stephen McDaniel, who told the reporters that it was the lawyer in him and that he was protective of his space. But later, he reluctantly agreed to the search on the condition that he would be present there. But soon the police found out the reason for him being so reluctant, as they found some very strange objects in his apartment. They found out that he was somewhat of a survivalist and was storing food and essentials in mass. Even more strangely, they found women's underwear cut up as masks and a pack of condoms in his apartment. When asked about it, Stephen slipped up and said that he had stolen them from his friend's house. This gave the police enough evidence to bring him in for further questioning. The detectives also reported that they found his behavior very strange. They described that he drank almost 10 bottles of water and began sweating profusely while the search of his apartment was going on. Later on, Stephen McDaniel is brought back to the police station for further questioning, and this time, the detective decides to grill him.
I thought you've been trying to help me all day find her, but you just wanted me to tell her I don't know. Are you a sorry piece of shit that you want me to tell her that? You got your ass on that news and stood out there and gave a media report that her mother saw about her missing daughter. And you want me to sit there and tell him that you don't know? Is that what you want me to tell him? Because you're all over the news. You sure stood out there and ran your mouth to the news media. But now you're going to get out here and you don't fucking know. You know. You're just a sorry piece of shit that don't give a fuck. Right?
No.
Well, why'd you tell the media everything? Do you need to see what you told the media today?
Yes.
It was on the 11 o'clock news. Well, I'm asking you. Tell me. I want to know.
I don't know where she is.
That ain't what you told the media.
Stephen sticks to his statement and doesn't reveal anything incriminating. However, he was still acting strange, and when the second detective started to question him, his mannerisms and answers became even stranger.
You don't know how to answer that with a yes or no, do you?
I don't know what's going on.
Lauren's missing. This pretty little girl right here, your neighbor, she's missing.
I know.
You went looking for her last night.
Yes.
Did you hurt Lauren?
No.
Stephen, did you hurt Lauren?
No.
I know this is hard for you to tell it, but it's weighing on you right now, ain't it, Stephen?
I didn't do it.
But
He begins to talk in single syllables and gives answers only in yes and no, a stark contrast to when he gave the interview to the media outlet just 6 hours earlier. His body language showed that he was on guard the entire time as he stayed completely still while maintaining aggressive eye contact with the detectives throughout the interview. The police also found a potential motive for Stephen McDaniel to murder Lauren, as it was reported by one of Lauren's friends later that Stephen had asked Lauren out on dates multiple times and was rejected each time. Stephen was arrested on charges of burglary and was kept in custody while the police extended their search of his apartment. It wasn't long before that crucial evidence would come to light that would lead to his incarceration. The police find the packaging for the hacksaw that was used to dismember Lauren's body. They also find a master key to the apartment complex that he had stolen from the manager and a sheet splattered with blood in the laundry, which was confirmed as Lauren's after testing. They also discover a pair of Lauren's underwear, a flash drive that contained horrific imagery, as well as several blog posts from Stephen's online accounts that described hatred and horrific violence towards women. On August 2, 2011, Stephen McDaniel was charged with the murder of Lauren Gidding and also 7 counts of child sexual exploitation. And after being in custody for 10 months, he finally confessed and pleaded guilty on April 21, 2012, and is sentenced to life in prison. Later on, Stephen McDaniel reveals a lot more about the night of the murder. In a statement, he describes how he stalked and murdered and then dismembered Lauren Giddings. He admitted that he'd been spying on her for several weeks leading up to the murder, even filming her in her apartment with a video camera attached to a stick. Stephen also admits to stealing the master key from the apartment manager and using it to get in. He morbidly recalls that when Lauren woke up to the sound of him entering her apartment, he pounced on her and then strangled her to death. He describes how Lauren pleaded to him to let her go once she uncovered his mask, but he held on to her for 15 more minutes even after she went limp. He then left the body on the floor and went back to his apartment to sit on his laptop. He continues in detail about how he came back to Lauren's apartment the next day, dragged her body to the bathtub, dismembered her with his newly purchased hacksaw, and deposited her torso in the dumpster in a garbage bag. He also mentions that he thought he would hear nothing back from this. But little did he know. A stroke of luck meant that the garbage collection truck didn't arrive that day on time, and Lauren's body was promptly discovered. The other body parts were never found. Since then, Stephen McDaniel has remained in Hancock State Prison and has attempted to appeal his conviction on numerous occasions. So far, he has failed with all of his appeals, and though he will be eligible for parole in 2041, legal experts strongly believe that he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. As for Lauren's family, it naturally took time for them to get over the initial shock and grief. But now they try to remember and honor the good memories they have of Lauren. They talk about her bubbly personality and the go-getter attitude. But some days they are still haunted by the black hole in the back of their minds that asks, what if? The case of Stephen McDaniel is a classic case study of a criminal mind that shows an extreme lack of empathy while at the same time being extremely self-aware. These are troubled individuals who become highly desensitized to their environment and surroundings and display a tendency to get a high out of committing horrific and gruesome acts. But for now, Stephen McDaniel remains locked up in prison for life, and there is no coming back for him from this. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any more true crime videos. Stay safe out there.